I tell you what, if there was one animal that's allowed to interrupt a podcast, it's this boy. Welcome back to another episode of the Safari Shots podcast, and today we are talking about underground photographic hides. And as you can see, I'm not in the office. We decided to come out into the field, and we're actually inside the King's Warren underground hide at King's Camp in the Timbavati. And as always, I've got with me Lance van der Vyver. Welcome.
How are we doing?
What do you think of the King's Warren underground hide? First impressions?
First impressions, it's very impressive. We've got aircon. I don't know if you guys can hear the aircon. It's about 400 degrees here, so we're sitting in the aircon. So if you do hear it, we do apologize. But yeah, very impressive. The scenery is absolutely fantastic. The windows, it's the first hide I've seen in this sort of horseshoe shape where you get a different view depending on which window you're in.
Yeah.
There's a coffee machine over there that's calling my name. There's TVs if you want to watch the TV instead of out the window.
Well, actually, those TVs, it's quite interesting. They link to CCTV cameras at the top. So what they actually do is they show you what animals are approaching from different angles. But if you haven't watched the video yet, I'll link to it above and in the video description. I actually made a whole video about the King's Warren. Go and check that, learn a little bit more about the hide. But we're not actually here to talk about the King's Warren hide only.
Yep.
We decided rather than just saying what we think is important, we're going to ask you guys what you want to know about underground hides.
Absolutely.
So what both of us did, we went onto our Instagram accounts and we ask us anything you want to know about underground hides. So we're both going to throw a few questions out, answer them as best as we can.
Yep.
And remember, you can still ask some additional questions in the comments down
Absolutely.
below. Yeah. I'll start us off. I wrote them down in my little bookie. So Dirk Palmiet asked the most obvious question. What is your favorite underground hide, Lance?
Oh, this feels like a loaded question.
I know.
I've been lucky. I don't actually know how many hides I've been in, but I think it's about 10 or 11.
I counted the other day. I've been in 11 underground hides.
Which one have you done that I haven't done?
I can't remember. I remember we did a little bit of a back and forth, and I can't remember which one it was.
So I then
It was this one. It was this one. I had been here before, and you hadn't been, but because this is your first visit, so we're probably now equal on 11.
I think then I might be ahead by one because I've been into Kanga camps. Hide.
That's correct, yeah.
If you'd call it.
But that's
hide.
quite a few different hides. So from those 12 odd hides, what would you say is your favorite hide? And really, it could be very personal, like for you specifically.
My favorite hide still has to be Mashatu. I think it was the first actual photographic hide I went into. It's the first hide where I've had experiences where, as a guide who sees elephants every day, I teared up in an amazing elephant sighting we had, which is weird for a guide.
Yeah.
It's the only hide where I've had big cats so far, although admittedly I haven't spent as much time in other hides.
Yeah.
I've helped build a hide. I really like that hide as well, but it's new. In a few years' time, it's going to be spectacular.
That's the one at Kambaku River Lodge down
yes,
there near
down in
Malala.
Kambaku.
Yeah.
But for, I'll say this with a grain of salt and touching wood, for guaranteed sightings every day if you go at the right time of definitely elephants, a lot of general game, lots of different birds. For me, you still can't beat it. Out of the hides I've been to. So there's obviously other rarer hides in Kenya where you get rare species. Striped hyena, leopards drinking at night, caracals, servals, that kind of stuff.
Well, so Lance is talking about Lentori and Shimpole that's
Yes.
built in that area not too far from Lake Natron, and those are relatively new underground hides, but over the last few years they've produced these amazing sightings, but we haven't been there.
No,
So
not yet.
We certainly can't call them our favorite hides.
Yeah.
But
Also very seasonal.
Yeah.
So Mashatu, you go any time of the year, even when it's closed. We've driven past Mashatu hide where they filled the water hole in with dirt. They actually fill it in with the TLB to let their land recover. And the animals are still waiting for the water. Whereas in Kenya, where the rare species are, when it rains, nothing happens.
Well, so the question that Dirk asked was very much what is your favorite? But the next question that a lot of different people ask is what is the best underground hide? Before we answer that, because that's really two different things, I might like just sitting here or at Antares or whatever it might be, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best hide.
Yeah.
But for me personally, I must agree with you, my favorite hide is still Mashatu as well, but it's because I've spent so much time there that to me it kind of feels a little bit like home.
Yeah.
But when we asked the question, what is the best underground hide? And hopefully we're answering a lot of you now, because a lot of you want to, if we're going to spend that money, which one do we go to?
Yep.
Mashatu actually lacks in a lot of things. You
Yep.
can't sit there during the night.
Nope.
It doesn't have glass in the front.
Nope.
There's no toilet to go
There's
to.
no aircon.
You pay extra to go, whereas here it's
Yep.
part of the camp. You can just walk down.
Yep.
So I think when we answer the question of what is the best underground hide, I think it really boils down to is what do you want? What do you
Yeah.
want to photograph? What is
Absolutely.
important to you? I had someone ask, if you haven't watched our previous podcast, it's about Mashatu. And in the comments, someone asked, is there a washroom at the hide? And I'm like, no, there's not.
Yeah, there's a
And-
nice tree out the back.
Well, that's the thing, is you're going to have to use the bush loo, but for a lot of people, that might be a deal breaker. Like here, where we're sitting here in the King's Warren, if you need a drink, the loo, a nap,
Yep.
you just walk to your room down the road.
There's actually a phone right there. You can call reception and they will bring you drinks.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
which is awesome.
So I think in terms of the best underground hide, I reckon Mashatu is still one of the best because of what you just said. The hit rate throughout most of the
Yeah.
year is incredible.
The hit rate is amazing.
It's absolutely incredible. And we cannot overlook Zimanga. I think Zimanga,
Yes.
which has a lot of different underground hides, we're talking more about the reserve, but they've got 2 underground hides, 2 small bird hides.
Yep.
They've got the
Predator
lagoon
hide,
hide,
scavenger
the scavenger hide.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different hides, but I think collectively, it's actually quite hard to beat the hit rate at Zimanga, considering the fact that you can go to many different hides there.
Yeah. The thing I feel there, though, is because there's so many different hides, you almost always feel like you've missed out.
Yeah. You might be in the wrong hide.
Yes. I mean, if you spend the whole day, you might have amazing sightings in the scavenger hide, vultures and hyenas and jackals and things, and then you hear the guys who came back from the overnight hide, and oh yeah, we had lions rock
Yeah.
up, and then instantly you feel you miss out. Whereas places like this, you see something or you don't.
Yeah, I totally
There's also pros and cons to a lot of different hides in one place, because which one do you choose?
Yeah.
You don't know where anything's going on the day, so.
Look, I think, and we've said this before in the Mashatu podcast where we spoke about underground hides, you've got to give yourself a chance.
Yeah,
You've
absolutely.
got to go to a hide for as long as possible to give yourself a hit rate. If Lance and I were to stay right here where we are, you can see outside, we might have to pause this podcast when something comes down.
There's
There's
an
an impala, 2 Egyptian geese, a hadida, we had some hammerkop earlier, and yesterday afternoon, there were tons of ellies here.
Yeah.
But you never know when that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And here at King's Camp, you actually have to choose between your game drive and the hide, because you're not paying extra for this hide session in the camp.
Yeah.
You can go on your game drive or you can sit here. Whereas at a place like Mashatu or a few other places, you have to actually pay a little bit extra as almost like an added activity to go and sit in the hide.
That's the strange thing. So most of the hides are kind of set up as photographic hides. They're made for photographers. You go there at the best time of day for the best light, the best action. So Mashatu, Zimanga, all of them. This is an added bonus of coming to King's Camp.
Yeah.
It's very good for photographers. It's made very well, but it's not a photography
It's not
experience.
only for photographers. It's very
if
much
you
for
want to
everybody
come
in the
down and get close to the impala that's now drinking, you can, which is
Absolutely.
awesome. And I seriously think if you own a lodge in 2024 and you don't have a hide, you're missing out.
I mean, our minds are always blown when we think about how few lodges actually have them. So kudos for King's Camp for putting it up and doing such a great job. But let me ask you this, coming back to what's the best photographic hide, I suppose what a lot of people may not have articulated exactly like that is, but they might be wondering in their heads, what's the difference between a hide where you have the glass or the windows in the front, like we have here, where you can conceal it, and that's obviously Zimanga and here, versus Mashatu that's completely open, Antares that's completely open, Kambaki, a few other ones.
I think the one at Samburu also has glass.
What's your feeling about the glass and the aircon and all that sort of stuff?
So right now, because we'll maybe put a behind the scenes shot up afterwards. There's a light stand, there's a tripod, there's a light stand, we've hung a sheet,
Took us an hour
we
to
set
set
up for an hour just for this podcast. So I am loving this glass with this aircon right now. But for photography, I don't like the glass. You often smack your lens on the end because you're trying to, compose a shot or something, and you're just not thinking, and you whack the lens, you might scare the animal away. I've been to some hides, there were scratches all over the glass. So elephants had thrown all mud, the guys had cleaned it, and there was a little stone, there's scratches. And then you had to pick a spot in between a scratch to take your shots. Nighttime photography, there's always a stupid little LED somewhere, especially on the front of a camera on your cell phone. We've got little LEDs now. Those things glow in glass. So if you're just doing star shots and you have this little glowing red light, it's actually very bright versus the stars, and all you see is red. So,
but having said that, though, the glass allows you to have the edge of the water a lot closer because the animals don't see you on the inside or don't necessarily hear you that often. So they can come and drink a lot closer.
I mean, we're having a fat chat now, and these impalas are not used to people being this close because this hide is, what, 2-3 months old?
No, it's a little bit older. So it was actually opened in, I think, June or July last year, but it's very new.
Still, so it's about 6 months, 6-7 months. But those impalas do not know we're here. So that is a bonus. If you're in an area where there's shy animals that do not like people, the glass is a huge bonus. But in saying that, a lot of the hides, like the Mashatu hide's been around so long, everything now comes. Lions come, leopards come, they've had hyenas come in the windows and steal beanbags. So again, it's a trade-up. And it's a trade-up of, for the what is the best hide. What do you want? Do you want birds? Do you want elephants? Do you want...
How close do you want to get? What focal length?
Do you only have a 70 to 200, whereas this hide will be a little bit far away? Do you only have a 600 mil, where then Kumbaku will be a little bit too close? So I don't think we did answer the question, but the answer is yes, and the answer is no.
Well, one thing that's quite cool, and what I love about what Warren Moore and the guys from King's Camp did here, is they did a lot of, they asked all the right questions before they designed the hide. So if you just grab there, this can open. So just to give you an idea, this window can open. So the idea is that if there's no strong wind from here, or if you want to hear the sounds there, you can actually open this up and enjoy that sort of wilderness feel. But you can close it down when it's hot like today or there's wind coming through. So this, I must say, I absolutely love. And this is the special glass.
Special glass. And it's actually nice and tinted. So when it's really bright out there, it's actually quite nice to close it, and it's a little bit nicer on your eyes. A good point. I once had clients in Ndlovu River Lodge. I was with them in the morning, and then I went home. And then that afternoon, they were alone in the hide, and a lion rocked up. And they were alone. They didn't know what to do. There's no glass there. And they didn't like the feeling. They loved the experience, but they didn't like the feeling.
You feel a little bit safer when it is closed.
Yes, and there was that video, which is a little bit famous now. It's been doing the rounds of the lion cub trying to steal the guy's camera recently. Whereas when you have glass, you can just put the window down, and that stuff doesn't happen. If you have a guide with you, that shouldn't happen anyway, but a lot of these places don't have guide. The nice thing with the windows, you don't need a guide down here. Guests are more than welcome to walk down here, feel absolutely safe. They keep the windows shut, and they're safe. Whereas all the open hides actually require guides. So there's always someone with you in Mashatu. There's always ones with you in the ones in Zambia, and it's a safety thing when it's
open. Well, I think the most important thing to remember is that these hides do differ. Some of them are closed, some of them are open, some of them can open and close. And they will each have their advantages and disadvantages.
Well, funnily enough, name 2 hides that you can go to where you know your shots will be exactly the same as each other.
You're 100% right.
There isn't.
And the reason for that is because the background is different.
Yes.
So I know of some hides where the backgrounds were maybe not considered so carefully.
Yes.
Granted, a lot of the owners didn't have the option. There's only so many places where you can put a hide because of the water sources and so forth. And that's where King's Camp's very lucky because it faces the right direction. It's got beautiful trees and a bit of a dip in the background.
And they're far.
And all the best hides, like the Zemanga hides and the Mashatu hide and all those ones have epic backgrounds. Nice and clean, it's nice to look at, and it's always going to give you... The one at Ndlovu River Lodge, the former Ndlovu River Lodge that's now owned by the Konami portfolio, or the Karongwe portfolio, I should say. You can go from Konami Lodge. That has a beautiful knobthorn tree in the background that gives you a perfect reflection.
See, I don't like a big tree in the background because then it's in all of my wide shots. I still think and I'm a little biased, but I still think Kumbaku River Lodge has the best background because it's on the river, and then you look into the
Kruger National Park.
The Kruger National Park into the mountains. If nothing comes, it is beautiful. The downside there is, like you say, it's where it is. It's on a river, so you don't always get the animals coming through because there's water in the river. So.
Well, you actually touched on one of the questions that someone else asked. Sean Etzebeth asked, when you're in an underground hide, what's best, going for wider shots or close-ups?
Yes.
Good answer.
So I always take all of my gear to the hides, always. I've always got a 400 2.8. I've always got the 2x teleconverter, so I can be at 800 if I need to. I've always got a 70 to 200, and I've always got something really wide. If an elephant comes and stands right here, even a 24 to 70 is too close. Yeah. You need to be like that little 10 to 12, I think, 10 to 22.
10 to 22,
it is, the new one. I would love that just for hides. I probably would never use it any other time, but for hides when an elephant is right there.
Yeah.
But again, it depends. If it's an elephant and there's lots of them, if it's a herd of elephants and there's lots of them, what's the sky doing? Is there nice poofy clouds? Shoot wide. Is it a solid bank of white sky and it's way too bright and the elephant's all in the shade and it's just going to be blown out? Rather than use a long lens and get detailed shots, the texture on the trunk and things like that. So there's no right and wrong answer, and the right answer is take everything. You have to. And then the thing is, if you only shoot one lens, you're only going to get one look. Whereas if you shoot a multiple lenses, you're going to get a nice variation out of it.
But all the more reason to go for multiple sessions, because you know as well as I do, when you go into that underground hide and the animals come, you don't know what to pick up.
No, yeah.
Typically, you'll see here, there's always space to put your gear. So you will typically have a long lens, a medium lens, and a wider lens. And if you have one body, you might want to change those lenses.
And if you don't have a wide lens, a phone works.
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
Absolutely. Yeah. So now you sit here and a herd of elephants come in. I see a lot of my clients, and even that happens to me. I don't know what to pick up.
Yeah.
So very often what Lance and I would do on photographic safaris is we would conceptualize shots, or it's shots we've taken before, and we would tell the clients, listen guys, when a herd of elephants come in, let's try and get close-ups of the trunk, getting water, etc., etc., etc. So Lance is 100% right. Bring all your lenses. And then I would try and think to yourself, what is the shot that you want to make when something comes down, and then give yourself a chance.
And again, some hides don't ever have elephants, so then a super wide is not as important. Some hides giraffe drink a lot.
Yeah.
If you've only got a 600 mil, you're missing out on how weird a giraffe is when it drinks. So then your 70 to 200 and your wider stuff is going to be better.
But it's funny because at the Karongwe portfolio hide, the small bird hide there, it's kind of called the bird hide, but then a giraffe comes to drink.
And
so you've got your long lens ready to photograph a waxbill, right in its face, and then a giraffe comes and you can only photograph its
sprays
foot.
You in the
But
window.
Like Lance said, that's when a phone works beautifully as well. But it's always good to have a variety.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely, you definitely need a long lens, and then a medium is always good. If you don't own a wide angle, I wouldn't buy a wide angle for a lens. I might, but I wouldn't recommend buying a wide angle just for hides because phones do such a good job. Now, I hate to say that as a photographer, but phones are amazing.
Yeah. So Mark Dumbleton asked a funny question. He asks, why is it called an eye level hide and not a ground level hide? Because think of an elephant. It's not down at eye level, it's up there.
Yeah, so I saw an elephant yesterday in the water though, and that was eye level.
It's funny, we chatted about it a little bit. It's not necessarily always about the animal's eyes, it's about our eyes. We are right down here, and the reason that we come to these underground hides is for that perspective. And think about it, any other animal that drinks has to come down to our eye level here, and we're at their eye level. It's just the elephant that has a straw for a nose.
Exactly. So, if anything, it should actually be called a water level hide. So all these hides, so I don't know if you guys can see out the window too well, but the water is here. So our head is very close to the level of the water. Some of the other ones, like especially Zamanga, the one we built in Kumbaku, the water is actually here. So water level hide is better, but like you say, everything at the moment is eye level with us. Their eyes, minus an elephant. So.
There was another interesting question that someone asked. Copper Graham, he tailed off a little bit, but I thought we could bring it back.
Okay.
He actually asked me if I'm driving around in Tom Cruiser, that's the name of my car, by the way, would I climb out if I'm in a place like Botswana where it's allowed? In other words, would I climb out of a car to photograph animals at eye level, or let's call it ground level for Mark Dumbleton? Sorry, Mark.
Flower level.
Flower level. Would you actually get out in a place like that? And when wouldn't you do it?
Yes.
I know Lance would.
So I have the advantage that I'm a qualified trails guide. So I believe I'm good with animal behavior. I can read an animal. I think I have a very good idea of what it's doing. There's certain animals that I wouldn't do it with, especially if I'm alone. They're mostly buffalo and rhino, because
absolutely
one day something's going to grow. In an area where I don't know the particular animals, I'll be less likely to. In an area where I know the individual animals in particular very well, I'm all for it. The only animal I haven't done it with is, I was actually trying to go through them in my head the other day. It's probably a crocodile and a leopard.
Yeah.
I had a chance to do it with a leopard once, but I was alone. Nobody knew where I was, and she had a cub with her. So it wasn't the ideal situation.
I would say, rule of thumb, if you're ever thinking of doing this, first of all, make sure you're in a park where you're allowed to do it, like Mana pools or some parks in Botswana, because you don't want to get fined for doing it. Secondly, make sure that you're not disturbing someone else's sighting.
Yes.
Because if there are other
never
self-drivers or guides in the area and you climb out and you chase away their animals, that's just unfair.
Yeah.
Thirdly, it's got to be very open, because you never know when you climb out with this lion where his buddies are.
Exactly.
And I promise you, no ground level shot is worth dying for. It's just not worth it.
Or being mauled in survival.
Yeah, absolutely. And then obviously make sure that animal is far enough. That shot is only to be taken with a long lens like this. Yeah. So just think logically. I would always say, don't do it when you're alone, because you can never watch your back. Always make sure there's someone with you. Stay close to the car. So if you're going to do that, you crouch next to the car, under the car. But safety first. Only ever do that, if you know that it's 100%.
And I will only ever recommend it for me. I wouldn't recommend anyone else doing it.
Except if we're in Mana pools, where we're with a guide.
We've had clients that do it with us, but we're always with an armed guide, and we're also there so that we can say, okay, this is fine, the wind is here, the light is here, this is a good situation. In that case, I'll always push my luck as a photographic guide, because I know I'm a qualified guide as well. If the guide is comfortable with us and with the animals, and I know the guests are going to listen and respect the whole process, I will try almost everywhere we go. Yeah. But as soon as the guide says no, it's a no. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone on their own. Yeah. Anywhere.
I totally agree. Well, I think,
be honest,
let's bring it back to underground heights. So, Lance, I believe you've got some questions there as well.
Yeah, so Jason Moore has asked a few questions, which is really nice. So I actually know for a fact he's going to a few hides soon this year, and those hides are really well made. So the first question is all about lighting. Actually, most of these are all about lighting. So the first one is, how do you know when to front light, side light, back light if you have lights available?
Well, so that's another thing that probably brings us back to what's the best hide. I kind of like the ones where you have some lights and you can sit after dark. So at Mashatu, our favorite hide, you can't sit there after dark. Whereas here at King's Camp, and I know it's in Manga, you often have backlight and 2 side lights.
Yes.
And we've got little switches here on the wall that you can use, to light the animal and kind of create a studio effect if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that you must play around with those when you get a chance, because you never really know what the shot's going to look like. Yep. Your backlight's often much moodier than your if you put both your side lights on, it's almost a front studio look.
Yeah, a little bit flatter.
Yeah, a lot flatter. So I reckon it's really all about testing it. And again, all the more reason to go for a couple of nights so that you can play around with that. But I don't know what you typically like to do.
So we've added lights to our hide in Kambaka as well. We haven't added backlights yet because we didn't know how. They often get elephants, and those elephants push everything over. Yeah. We put up perches for the birds to come sit on. The next day the elephant just goes and knocks it over. But after seeing this and how these backlights are done, I have an idea. So we've got the front lights. They have a kind of a side light, which is a floodlight for the river, and then pending, there'll be backlights coming.
That's a Kumbaku,
That's
right?
a Kumbaku down Malalan. And then the hides that I think the lighting has done the best, although I've seen some shots from here and it's awesome, is the ones in Kenya. They're surrounded by lights. So
that's Lentor,
Shompoli as well. Shompoli's put in nice lights now. And they get a lot of cats and hyenas, which have nice fluff. So the backlight glows. It makes this beautiful glowing outline. So yeah, again, all of our questions are kind of like, it depends, but it depends. Jason actually had another question about lighting, and it is, how do you blend or what are your settings for blending light for nighttime shots? I'm assuming he's also talking about like stars. And you would know, you've done that amazing lion shot from Ndlovu River Lodge. And if I'm correct,
it's Antares.
Antares. And if I'm correct, it was double exposure, right?
Yeah, so what you have to remember is that your shutter speed when you use the lights will drop drastically than what it would be during the daytime. And all the more reason when you don't have a very low f-stop lens, or something with a massive aperture, you're going to struggle with low light when it gets dark. So sometimes you might be forced to keep all your lights on to get a fast enough shutter speed, especially if there's a little bit of movement. But when you're photographing stars, and there's only a few places where you can actually do that. You can do it here at the King's Warren. You can do it at Antares, which is another one of my favorite underground hides. It's in Griki Nature Reserve in Balule. And then you can also do it at Zimanga when you get those stars in. But obviously, to get the Milky Way in, you need about a 30-second exposure.
And a super high ISO and a super large
Absolutely.
aperture.
So your animal exposure is going to be a separate shot, and you've got to blend it afterwards. And that's essentially just taking 2 shots and then doing a Photoshop blend to do that. But believe me, having done that with lion and a herd of elephants, took me about a year for the stars to align, excuse the pun, because the conditions need to be perfect. You need to be there on a clear night, when there's no moon, when there's no wind, when the elephants come and drink at the right time, and your settings are right, and your focus is right. So there's a lot of things that's not an easy shot. To do animals drinking under the stars is a very technical shot, and all the more reason to go with a photographic guide. I know we say this a lot because we want you to join us, but I absolutely mean it. You're going to struggle to get that shot on your own if you've never tried it before. Whereas with us, we can just give you the settings.
And that is a shot where gear kind of is important. You need the lens that can handle the star stuff. So you need a fast aperture. You need a camera where you can push the ISO a little bit. Where
it needs to be wide.
And it needs to be wide. You need a way that your camera doesn't move. So either a little mini tripod or a beanbag, but a beanbag's not that great.
I actually use a big tripod and I put it outside. I open this up and put it outside.
Which is another reason
with the cable release.
The hide is important which way it looks. So this one has a little overlap. Some have big overlap, some have none. So you don't have to have the camera so far out. But that first shot is not going to be one shot. When the lion is drinking, you don't want to go, click, I've got it, let's now go and do the stars. You shoot the snot out of that lion until he's walked away.
You want one shot that's sharp.
Yes, but your camera needs to not move because you need the next shot to line up. So if there's trees on the side or the floor and things. So what gear you take is quite important. And I think we spoke about actually tripods and should we take one, and I was like, no, but then I thought about it and maybe a small.
Exactly. So there's a lot of things to consider.
So just to throw in this sort of question, do you think flashes would be better for that then? I know my answer.
I'll be honest with you, and you know this about me, I'm not a big fan of flash, and I think that you do run a slight risk of scaring the animals when you do flash. And I think you also run a risk of losing the studio look that you have the luxury of creating in an underground hide because of the side lights when you use the flash, because suddenly you're creating a full-on front light.
I have a second question for you. If you have a shot in your head and that's the only shot that matters and you're allowed to put multiple flashes off camera wherever you want, what's your answer now?
Just because I don't like the schlep of putting the flashes out, I'm still going to do it without the flash. But I mean, again, this is exactly, this is so me and Lance. I mean, we've been photographing together for 6 or 7 years. Lance will always try and find the flash angle and a way to do it, and you'll put it. I've been with you at Antares where you had the flash on the top, and I was like, why are you putting a flash on the top?
Yeah.
But I think that's more about each to their own. What you like. But if you can do that, that's a lot of fun.
Personally, if I was in a place, so like this is a perfect place.
Oh
because
my
there's
word!
Trees on the
Sorry,
side.
you won't see this through this exposure. There is a whole herd of impala drinking here behind us, or at least they've just come in. They're probably going to drink soon.
There's a baby that's going to headbutt an Egyptian goose. So personally, this hide would be an awesome place to do it because there's trees on the side. You can hide your flashes. You can do the backlighting by putting the flashes in the back, and it's an hour from my house, so I could come here, So for me, the reason I like flashes, if I can put them up, is because then I can do it in one shot.
Yes.
I can turn on a spotlight, I can focus, I can turn that spotlight off, I expose for the stars, and I expose the animal with the flash. But it gets very difficult because it's not one flash. It's backlights, side lights, front lights, all in the one scene. So it takes a lot of sitting and planning for it to work.
And the reality is still that...
it
sounds like there's an elephant coming, guys. Oh, wow. Oh, elephant is just rocked up here right behind us. Wow, look at that. Where's your phone?
There's apparently a huge tusker coming.
Sounds like a big tusker's coming. Well, enjoy this with us for a second.
Where's my phone? I've got a camera.
Oh, yeah, use your camera. Go for it. Jeepers. Wow.
He needs to go to Kenya.
I tell you what, if there was one animal that's allowed to interrupt a podcast, it's this boy. So here is our podcast setup. There's a B camera 1, lights, 2 A cameras, B camera 2, the one and only Lance van der Pfeiffer.
And that giant oak.
Yeah, and all the Ellies. Look at that. Wow, how incredible was that? We were worried when we came to sit here that something might come in and ruin the podcast, but I think if anything, that actually enhanced it. That was incredible.
The worst thing was, we were like, yeah, if elephants come, let's pretend like nothing happened. We'll all be cool and casual, and then that happened. We all turned and ran for our cameras.
Well, it actually made me think, and I mentioned it briefly now while we're watching the elephants. I know someone asked, what is the best time of the year to come to underground hides? And obviously the best time is to go during the dry season.
Yeah.
But this just proved again that animals that are used to drinking in a specific place can come any time of the year.
Yeah.
But if you're going to spend that money, I would say always try going during the dry season. And the reason I'm a little bit hesitant to say that is June, July, or August, or whatever it might be, remember that the seasons differ throughout Africa.
Yep.
So in southern Africa, your dry season will typically be from June to October. Mm-hmm. And the later in that dry season, typically the better. But I spoke to Greg DeToy the other day, another wildlife photographer that goes up to Shampole and Lentori, that area in Kenya, where those other great hides are. And he said to me, it's very unpredictable, the rain. Yeah. And their rainy season is typically April and May, and then again in November.
Yeah.
And you just hope that you hit it outside.
And they are one of the places where when it rains, it's very dead,
yes.
Which is... Yeah.
So I think with that, always try and resist going to a place on a summer special. If you're really desperate for sightings, again, Lance and I, you would have heard in our previous podcast, if we do the Mashatu underground hides, we go in the winter. It'll be typically July or August or September, there or thereabout. And we'd only end up in summer at hides when it's a situation like this where it's just an opportunity to do that. And again, proof that something could come in.
Yeah, so we actually run a hide workshop in November. So we do our big cats of Sabi Sands, and we tack on to the November one a bird hide safari. And that's down in Kumbaku, but it's mostly aimed at birds. So all the nice breeding plumage of all the birds and the migratory birds are back.
What month do you do that?
So that's in November.
So see, the reason that it's good to do that in November, it's often before the first rains fall as well, even though it's sort of moving into summer. But if those rains fall, you know as well as I do, there's a chance that those birds might drink at puddles, small puddles that fall over. And that's why going in January, February, March for birds gets really, really risky because all the little pans fill up and it starts becoming tricky to...
Can we swap them for hippos?
Lance, someone else asked a very interesting question, and maybe something that I think is worth touching on. They were asking, I'm going to actually read it off here so that I get it right. It's from Scrimshaw Photography, I think. In your opinion, what separates a photo hide from baiting? In other words, is luring animals into this waterhole the same as putting a carcass out to attract a leopard?
No. It's the short answer. So this hide in particular, and most hides are built on pre-existing waterholes. So this waterhole's been here forever. The animals are used to it. They come here often anyway. And then someone had a brilliant idea of, well, why don't we build a hide and then we can sit close to the animals? Yes. Definitely cutting up meat and throwing carcasses out is a different story. Yeah. And that then is baiting. There's water all over the place anyway, and these water holes have been here for years. So you are not bringing the animals in here for the hide. Yeah. The hide was built because the animals are coming here, and it makes sense. So, baiting is a very touchy subject.
But the thing is also what you have to remember about baiting, and the issue of baiting is there's two types of ethics. Is it unethical to bait full stop, or is it unethical to bait for photography and then enter into a competition? Because I'll be honest with you, the scavenger hide at Zimanga, where they put meat out, that doesn't bother me at all. Because I know those animals are going to come in. It's not necessarily changing their behavior completely, or perhaps they do need that little bit of extra food that they might not get because of other land use systems in the area.
So at one point, I know Charles was doing it because the vultures were getting poisoned elsewhere.
Correct.
So why not bring them in every day and feed them here so they don't go out and get poisoned in a farm?
Correct. So I think as a photographer, you just need to, I would always disclose if I photographed something that was lured in specifically by food, but I'd never do it with water, and I certainly don't have any ethical issues with
No, see, I don't think water is a bait. You're not baiting because you're not putting water out there one day for your photo and then walking away. Whereas putting food out is a different story.
We'll put it this way, if it was baiting, then we're all baiting our birds in the garden when we put bird seed out. And every single waterhole in the Kruger National Park and the Kalahari and every other national park is baiting as well. But I think baiting, there doesn't necessarily always have to be a negative word and connected to it either. I think at the end of the day, it's always about whether or not you are negatively impacting the animal's behavior and their survival. So and if you are, then you must start,
and it normally comes down to predators, and it's mostly because if you go and feed predators a lot, if it might be a fish eagle throwing out a dead fish or whatever, or a leopard or a lion, they figure it out, and all of a sudden now, I'm not going to go catch my own fish because I know this oak's going to come twice a day with his boat and feed me a fish, and then you are definitely altering their behavior. I think that's why birders get away with baiting so much. Because it's not considered baiting for birds most of the time, right? I mean, everyone we know has a bird feeder in their backyard, and no one kind of batters an eye. But it's because you're not really changing that bird's behavior, but you might be. So again, food baiting, it's always seen as negative. You look at all the hides in Europe, brown bears, wolves, wolverines, they're all baited. You don't go to a hide there and sit and nothing's going to arrive, it's all baited. So it's also weird, they tend to get a little bit less slack than Africans because we're lucky you can go out and we have this amazing wildlife and it's quite abundant, whereas if you just go and move around, you hardly ever see anything. So we'll probably have to do an ethics discussion at one point because
I like that.
I reckon we could talk for 5 hours on the pros and cons of all.
Well, Lance, before we miss the afternoon game drive, because I see Caitlin's looking at us here, he's like, hey, you guys are actually going to join us on game drive. I have another question that I want to ask you and I want to answer myself as well. But first of all, I really want to thank Warren Moore and Cathan and King's Camp for inviting us and allowing us to actually film this podcast in the King's Warren. If you guys enjoyed this, us actually sitting here in the field recording the podcast, let us know in the comments down below, and we'll try and get out of the office a little bit more often. And if you own a lodge and you want to invite us to come and do something in the field, again, our details are in the video description. Send us a DM or an email. And I also want to use this opportunity to thank our patrons. So everybody that supports the Panthera Photo Safaris Conservation Fund, a massive thank you. You help incredible conservation work, and all my patrons as well for helping out and allowing me to do this for a living. I really, really appreciate it. Lance, so final question, and a lot of people ask this. What is your favorite underground hide sighting ever?
Sure.
Putting you on the spot, I know.
Something that I was going to mention that I forgot. You were saying at Moshati there's no toilet. And we actually joked the last safari we were there, the couple went out and they peed, and then I went out and I was like, I'm just going to go and find the lions. And I went to the bathroom behind the bush, and as I was coming back in, I look up over the open air, and here came the whole pride of lions.
Wow.
So that was very special. It's the first time I've had cats in a hide, which is always amazing. Just to be that close to a predator, and then the eye level thing really comes into its own, because being low to a cat is somehow magical. So that was super special, but as a photographer, the light wasn't great.
I remember those photos.
So very cool experience. Was it a photo question? If it was a photo question...
What's your favorite... What was your favorite sighting? Like your favorite sighting in an underground?
So it still had to be the elephant sighting that was the next sighting there.
At Moshati?
Yeah. So it was that one we talked about. Yeah. So absolutely nothing happened for about 3 hours. We were just like, well, it is what it is. And then we had this almost out-of-body experience when about 200 elephants turned up and just mingled. And you could almost... We all know elephants talk to each other and that kind of thing. You could see them communicating between each other, and there was tiny babies, and it was that for me was the best experience ever. And yourself?
Well, so mine was actually down at Zimanga in the Timbavati overnight hide. I was there for 4 or 5 days, and I ended up staying in the hide alone because it was a summer visit. There were no other guests, so I was in the hide alone. I went in about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Had a very slow start because it was rainy, and I kind of thought to myself, what miserable weather, having this opportunity now. There's nobody else in my way. I can just do whatever I want and nothing's happening. So it was a bit of a hack staying awake, and I drank way too much coffee, and I listened to way too much Ed Sheeran. And every time my bladder got full, I rushed to the loo and rushed back so that I didn't miss anything. And eventually the sun actually started coming up, and I still hadn't had a magnificent sighting. And just as I was about... I had already given up, to be honest with you. There were a few woolly neck storks and marabou storks picking off grasshoppers from the surface of the water where they had drowned. And they all flew up.
Sure.
And this pride of lions came through. It was already light, but the lights were still causing a studio effect.
Yeah.
So 2 lionesses with their cubs came down, and they drank 4 meters away from me.
And you were alone.
I was alone. I was able to photograph and filmed it. And they were aware I was inside. They couldn't see me, but I think they could hear me.
Yeah.
So I had that incredible eye contact. And it's not only one of my favorite underground hide experiences, it was one of my favorite wildlife experiences ever.
Yeah.
And if that's
very cool.
If you guys ever want to have a great time, go and sit in an underground hide.
Yeah, absolutely. In this day and age, there's enough of them out there that it's easily accessible now. It used to be you had to travel to a different country and really go out of your way. But now there's enough of them where it's...
that reminds me, someone called Luzanne actually asked me whether underground hides are only for professionals or can amateurs enjoy it as well. Of course amateurs can enjoy it. It's just that the tough thing is it's often expensive to go there because it is often at a high-end luxury lodge. Very few game reserves and national parks have built eye-level hides for a lot of safety issues, I reckon.
Yeah, and it's an added bonus. So it's normally a reserve that's well-established lodge, and they're looking for that next thing to do for the clients. So then it's an added.
So unfortunately, it is quite expensive, but everybody's welcome. Anybody can enjoy it, and as Lance said earlier, you don't need your camera. You can just come down here, sit here, and enjoy it. I mean, take that elephant bull we saw now. The fact that we saw it at not eye level, we saw it at trunk level.
Oh, no, that little one was looking me straight in the eyes. I saw it.
Guys, we're going to leave the King's Camp website address in the video description, together with the Panthera Photo Safaris website, where you can book a safari with Lance. I'll have my website, The Safari Expert, in there as well. If you guys ever want to ask any questions, drop it in the comment down below. Like this video, share it with your friends, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks, Lance. Very lucky, man.
Oh, we actually hit one once.
The baby's ears behind up.